Morning everybody, fantastic to see you all again. So you've never seen this angle, I don't think. So this is my study. I usually shoot with a camera over there, shooting in that direction. So a little bit different, but I wanted to just try something a bit different, and I'm going through editing a few photos as well. So I was in the Peak District shooting the heather about a week and a half ago. There was some amazing fog and I managed to get some photos. And I recorded a little bit of video there, and I'll show you a bit of that video as I talk about the photos. But I tried to concentrate on getting the photos because the conditions were changing really quickly, and after all it's the photos that matter. And if I can make a video as well, then that's fantastic. Obviously I always try and do that. So I thought it'd be really interesting to show you these photos and then show you how I would edit one of the photos as well, and then we'll go and print it as well on my printer here. Not the big one, this one. So these are the photos that I took. So this was the first one. Before I get into this and talking about this, let's go to the field, and you can see me shooting this shot, and actually it was a vertical version of this shot, but when I looked at them both I felt this works best. So I've been in the Peak District for a few days and I've not been vlogging, but I wanted to stay for this extra morning because I thought it was going to be foggy, and I've got so lucky. It's really foggy. There's loads of amazing heather, and I'm hoping to get something really special. And there's not a breath of wind. It's fantastic. So one of the advantages of coming back to the same place again and again is that when it's conditions like this, you can just go to those places that you know there's a good chance of getting a composition. Now it may be that that composition changes or things change as the conditions change, but I do believe in going back to the same location if you can find somewhere that's near where you live. So I've got a composition here that I've taken before, and I'll show you the before shot as well, and I'll just show you it. Basically what I've got is I've got it vertically, and I've got these trees here, and I'm just being a little bit careful with these trees here to make sure there's separation, but it looks absolutely amazing. So yeah, you can see there it was really stunning conditions, and this is a photo that I'd taken quite a few times before. It was really interesting actually, because when I went around a loop and then came back about an hour later, this same location, if I show you this shot, was like that. So you can see without any fog, it's significantly different. So that fog makes such a big difference. So on this image, what I really liked, and I think I mentioned this, was these two trees here, just receding into the background. Obviously this was really nice as well. And what I tried to do was compose it so I had this nice area of receding trees in the forest, and then you sort of saw the edge of the forest, and then these two isolated here a little bit. So first of all, what I want to do when I'm editing this is check focus. So I focused on this near tree here, that's pin sharp. I'm not too worried about the depth of field. I shot it at f10, so it should be fairly good, but there's probably just a lack of focus right at the back there, but I'm not worried about that because it's foggy. And yeah, these trees were just really nice here, so that worked really well. You can see that I exposed it quite well, although it looks underexposed. I'm going to bring up those shadows obviously, but I wanted to make sure I got the histogram all the way to the right hand side, which I did. Nothing's blown out, all perfect. So the first thing I'm going to do is just crop it a little bit. There's not much to crop really, so I'm just going to crop it in a little bit there, and probably just rotate it a little bit as well. So that'll do. I'll probably come back and crop it a bit more. And then one of the first things I do when I actually edit a photo is I have a mess about with the exposure. So I'll look at the exposure and see how it changes the image when I change the exposure. So I might reduce it and see if there's any details come out in the highlights, and increase it and see what details come out in the shadow. So I think that looks pretty good really. So what I want to do is ultimately get to that, but because we've got a lot of highlights here, I've got to be careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on
this here, which shows me when there is something overexposed. And it's not necessarily pure white, it just means that it's starting to lose detail. So you can see that, yeah, I can go quite a long way before that happens. So I'll probably go to about there, and I'm going to increase the contrast, which I want to do just to bring out some of the colour in the scene at the bottom. And then I'm probably going to go and just increase the shadows here a little bit. Now what you can see is that I'm losing detail of this tree in the background, which I'm going to address later, I think. And then I'm going to increase some clarity, which I might reduce again later, but I just want to bring out some of the detail in this area here. And you can see that if I increase the clarity, then that does that. Usually in woodland scenes I reduce the clarity, but in this one I think increasing the clarity is going to help quite a bit, and it might bring out these two trees a little bit more as well. So I'm just going to go back up to the top. I should have just messed about with the white balance first. Now it was quite a cool scene, so I think that looks about right, and I'm going to mess with the colours a bit, so I think that's okay. I'm going to increase the whites. And when I do that, I'll probably just reduce the exposure. No, I think actually I'll do it to about there. And then the blacks, I don't want them to be any true blacks, so I'm just going to push that black up a little bit as well. And then I'm just going to do a curve that I usually do on all my shots. So I'm going to again bring up the blacks a little bit and then just do a little bit of an S curve. Not much, just a little bit of an S curve. And I want to be careful again of those whites up there. Okay, so now what I want to do is just play around with the colours. So I'm going to go to the luminance of the colours. And this green I just want to lighten a little bit. So I'm just going to lighten these two colours, which will lighten the green. That's starting to look good. And I'm also going to increase the saturation, but reduce the saturation of the blues a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then the hue, I don't want it to be so green, so I'm just going to drop that to a more of a yellowy colour, because I feel like that just looks a little bit better. It doesn't have to be exactly what it looked like in reality. You know, it's not a record shot. It's, you know, you're trying to create a piece of art, so you've got to do what looks good, I think. So that's looking pretty good already, but there's some local adjustments that I think I need to do on it. The first local adjustment is I just want to lighten this top area up. So I'm going to do a grad filter here, drag it down, and all I'm going to do is increase the shadows a bit more in that top area. That's all I need to do. And then I also want to pull out just a little bit more lightness in this area here. I'm just going to do a radial filter, put it there, invert it, and I'm going to lighten that up a little bit. Probably increase the whites a little bit as well. Now, just probably need to move it that way a little bit. So that's looking good. I like that. I think that looks good. Now the problem is that this tree here has just disappeared because it is really light, and I've added a lot of whites to this image. So what I need to do is sort of bring out these two trees a little bit. So the easiest way to do that is just put a radial filter over them. But because I don't want to affect these branches as well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mask, and I'll do a luminance mask, and I'll just get it to affect yeah, so that's not affecting those leaves as much now. So what I want to do is I want to increase the contrast, which does change the colour a little bit, so I've got to be careful. I'm going to reduce the exposure a tiny bit. I'm going to darken the blacks and lighten the shadows a little bit, but darken the blacks is the key thing, and then I'll probably add a little bit of clarity to it as well. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pull out the detail a little bit in that tree. Obviously I still want that graduation, but I'm pulling out a bit of the detail in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit more to this tree down here. So I'm going to add another radial filter, and I'm just going to just pull out that tree a little bit. Now I want to make sure that there's enough feather on it that it doesn't look too obvious. So I probably just need to be very careful with that and just going to pull those blacks back so you can start to see that tree in the background now. But it looks natural. I've probably just overdone that just a tad. So I'm just going to go back and increase that exposure again. And drop those whites a little bit. Yeah, you can start to see that now. It's only subtle. When I print this, that'll be just really subtle in the print, but it'll look really good because you'll just catch it. So I think that's starting to look good now. So the next thing I want to do is go and just play with the split toning of it. So I want the highlights in this to be blue because it was quite early in the morning, quite a cold feel to it. But I want I want the shadows to be blue, sorry, but I want the highlights to be warmer because the sun was just starting to peek through. So I'm going to go to the shadows, I'm just going to make those a little bit blue, and I'm going to go to the highlights and make those a little bit warmer. And then you can change the balance of that. So if I went all the way to that side, then it would just be shadows, all the way to that side, it'd be highlights. And I feel that it probably just wants to be a little bit more on the warm side, I'd say. So we'll put the balance about there. And that's looking pretty good, really. So that's good. So the other thing is just to see if there's anything that needs tidying up on it. I mean, these cobwebs are really nice. The one thing I think is I could probably pull out a bit more detail there. So maybe I'll put another graduated filter on for this bit, bring out some shadow detail, and then maybe just add a little bit of contrast there as well. I really like this tree stump here. I think it looks good. So I think that's starting to look good. I just want to go in and just check I'm happy with it. Now this obviously moved in the wind. I ended up shooting at 2 seconds, but actually I'm not that bothered about that. I think it tells a story a little bit. And probably what I do is I go away now, make myself a cup of tea, come back and then see if there's any other changes, because when you go and have a look at it again, it does change. I always look at it full screen as well and see what it looks like full screen. And that's, yeah, I think that looks good. I really like that. I think it's looking really good. So the next thing I do is I go to print and I go to page setup. I'm on A2 borderless. I'm going to print it on this paper, but the A2 version, which is photo speed, natural soft texture, bright white 315. It's got a slight texture to it. I print a lot of my prints on that, and I think it'll look really good. So what I need to do is I need to set it to A2 borderless. And then I basically just do it so that I've got a reasonable border like that. I'll probably just move it up to the bottom so the top and 2 sides border's the same, the bottom's bigger to give me room to sign it. And then I just need to check that I've got the right profile, which is this NST Bright White Canon Pro 1000 profile, which is a profile that Photospeed made for me on a print that I made on their paper on this printer. So that's good. I've got it set as Pro 1000, and then I just make sure that the quality of media on matte photo paper, which is the right setting for this particular paper. Print quality high, and then I can print. So let's print that and we can see what it looks like. Yeah, I mean this looks absolutely fantastic. There's something about when you get a photo off a printer, you just start to see that detail so well, and it really looks good. You can just see the second tree in the distance there. I think the white just works really, really well. Oh, when you get a print, it just looks so fantastic, doesn't it? I mean, it looks so good. And actually that little blurred area of the branch there, I'm not too bothered about. I think it tells a story, like I said. I really like this, it sort of anchors the bottom. And then these little bits of detail through the forest here are fantastic. And you can just see that tree in the background. You just make out the detail. It looks really, really beautiful. I'm really pleased with that. Anyway, I hope that's been useful. I hope you found how I edit a photo useful. You know, I always like watching other people edit photos. I think I gain a lot from it. And if you haven't tried printing your photos, then please do. You know, there's lots of online places where you can get them done relatively cheaply and really good quality. you won't regret it. It's so, so good to get a photo, you know, in your hand and just look at it. It just looks fantastic. Okay, thanks ever so much for watching, and until next Sunday, bye.